Right, so we're going to do a Titan swap, and if you don't know what a Titan swap is, or you do but kind of want to see what the details are, let me just go over really quick what we're going to do. Basically, we're going to take this upper arm here, we're going to replace it. We're going to take this lower arm here, and we're going to replace it. And what that's going to do is everything's going to come out a little, about 2.5 inches out more. So we're going to have to disconnect the steering rod here because it won't reach anymore. And we're going to have to extend it right here. There's a PRG sells an adapter that extends this. Also, the axle here won't reach anymore, so we're going to have to replace that as well. Now, not every Titan swap is the same. You got a lot of options for each piece. For example, the upper arms, you can go with a stock Titan arm, or you can go with a PRG Products one. I'm going with a PRG. The lower arm, generally people go with the stock Titan arm. The axle, there's a lot of options there. So you can go with an extended an axle extension from PRG, which is like $400. You can replace it with, I think it's from a Quest, or one of the other Nissan vehicles have axles that you can put into the R180 that are slightly longer. Or you can do what I'm doing, which is swap out the differential with an M205 from a Titan and use Titan axles. And that's a pretty good option. You can find differentials used at a junkyard for a pretty good price. I paid $450 for mine, and it's really good shape. Generally they go from $450, $600, it's more reasonable around the $600 range. And the axles for the aftermarket axles for that diff are only $40 each. So when you consider that just the little extensions are $400, you know, going with a differential is a pretty good option because you get a stronger diff. You get a diff that you can re-gear also. So there's a lot of positives. So if you just spend a little extra money, you can get a really good setup. So that's what I'm doing here. To start out with, the first thing we got to do is these are the ABS brake lines. We got to unhook these. We're going to be taking the whole suspension apart, and so things are going to be hanging. You don't want these to go tight or break. So there's these little clips right here. There's these little rubber things. You just pull them out of those. And there's 1, 2, 3, and I believe there's a fourth one down here. And so it's nice and loose. You got a lot of slack, so you won't be breaking that. Now I should mention before you start, I did another video on this, but this already does have the extended brake lines here installed, and you do need to get those installed because, you know, as I said, everything's going to be able to drop a lot when you're doing this, and if you don't have the extended brake lines, you don't want to be hanging on those rubber hoses. You don't want to have it break and spill hydraulic fluid all over the place. So make sure you do that part. There's a video on that, how to do the brake line extensions before you start doing the Titan swap. Now there's all sorts of orders you can do the swap in. You can do the upper arm first arm. There's a lot of orders you can do it. I just finished on the other side, and I did it in order that I think I'm happy with. Things seem to go smoothly. Now I'm doing this on the driver's side just because the driver's side adds an extra complication, which is this steering assembly here that gets in the way of removing the upper arm. So we'll go over how to handle that and be on our way. All right. So the first thing we're going to do is loosen this nut on the tie rod. This is what you'd loosen usually to do the alignment and stuff. We're going to loosen it now, and the reason to do that is because it's, you know, especially if it's stuck really hard, and this one was. If you try to remove it, once you actually remove the whole suspension and undid the tie rod and stuff, it's going to be really hard because you don't have anything to brace yourself with and nothing to pull against. So what you're going to do is you're going to take a 25mm nut, and I already pre-loosened this. It took me actually quite a bit of time. You might have to use penetrating oil and some heat to loosen it up. But basically you just do this, and it goes this way and loosens it up. And that's it. We can just leave it loose for now. We'll remove this whole piece later. We can just leave this loose for now, and then we'll take it out later. Next thing we're going to do is we're actually going to remove the tie rod from here while we're at it. Another reason to do this early too is because right now it's really hard to move this around. So once we take this around, this will be much more maneuverable and help us move things around. So this has a cotter pin that we're just going to take out. And then we have a 22mm nut here that we're going to take out with a torque wrench. And that's it. Now this just goes down. We're going to hit it with a hammer. And actually, let me leave the nut on there just so I don't damage anything. And it should come right down. And there we go. Tie rod is loose. I'm going to put the nut back on so we don't lose it. All right. So that's it for that. Okay, so next thing we're going to do is we're going to remove the upper control arm, which is this. And it has 2 bolts, one here, one here. And one complication is this here is in the way. It's hard to get a wrench in there, a torque wrench. And if you're coming from stock, this nut's on the other side, so you don't have any room to pull the bolt out. So what a lot of people do is they cut the bolt and get it out of the other side. I prefer just undoing disassembly and moving it out of the way, which is actually pretty easy, and I'll show you how to do that. The reason I prefer that is because it gives you a lot more room to work with, a lot easier to fit in a torque wrench to get these torqued back up. And it's very simple. It only takes a few minutes. Probably takes less than what it would take to cut the bolt and put a new one. So let's do that. All right. So to remove that steering assembly, it's just this one bolt right here, and this is behind the coilovers, like right on top of the differential. And it's not torqued very hard. So let's go ahead and remove that. It takes a 12 millimeter socket. Alright, so here we go. And then this piece just slides right up. It's easier if you grab it up on the top where I showed you earlier and kind of help it by rocking it gently up. You want to be careful not to break that little plastic. And there we go. Comes right off, and now you can move the top thing out of the way. So let me just show you on the top. See, this is now, you can move it and maneuver there, no problem. So that's what I think is the easiest. You just gotta be careful with that little plastic when you put it back on, and I'll show that when I do put it back on. So let's move on to getting the upper arm off. The first thing we want to do is secure this spindle. Once we take this bolt out here, this whole thing's gonna want to come out and go down, and we don't want to do that because we don't want it pulling on these brake lines or breaking anything. So what we're going to do is secure it. There's different ways to secure it. Some people use zip ties. I've used zip ties before and they've broken. If you do use zip ties, you want to double up or triple up so that they don't break. I'm just going to use this strap. Just going to wrap it around here. And then hang it on the back here where the upper arm attaches. Make sure it's tight. This is going to prevent it from coming back out here, and then I just go up to the engine compartment and hook up there. And this will prevent it from going down too much. So next we're going to take this nut off and remove this whole bolt, let the spindle come down off the upper arm. This is on the bottom a 22 millimeter. And on the top, I think it's probably a 20, 21 seems a little loose. I'm using 13/16 inch, which is right between 20 and 21, because I just don't happen to have a 21 inch, 21 millimeter socket. So let's get it off. A second. It's going to go much easier with. There you go. And then this whole thing's just gonna wiggle it out. If you're changing out a stock one, sometimes this is difficult to get out, and so you might have to get a hammer and just smack it a few times to have it separate. These PRG arms don't seem, at least, or they're pretty. They haven't been on there long enough, I guess, but they come off pretty easily without having to do much. So there we go. And now you see this, how this is there to hold it. I want to get it there a little more secure, but that'll hold for now. So next we're going to take this bolt out. And to do that we're going to use, I think it's 19 millimeter, which is the same as 3/4 inch. I'm going to use a wrench here. There we go. That's it. Comes right out. Careful with there's some brake lines back there, so careful when you take the bolt out, so that you don't damage those brake lines there. And we're going to do the same thing on this side. And we're ready to just pull on this, get this out. And we're done taking out the upper control arm. Alright, so if you're going to be changing out your coilover, which I'm not actually going to change it out, but I will put a spacer on, now is a good time to take the coilover out because you got everything free up here. It makes it really easy to undo all these bolts. And so to do that, we're going to first use a 19 millimeter socket here to get this bottom bolt out. Now this bolt, if you haven't taken it out before, can be very tough to take out. The first time I took it out I had to use this long of a breaker bar and add a cheater bar at the end of it too, so it was very tough. So just be really careful too, because this nut also is kind of soft, so you don't want to strip it. I've already loosened it, so it should be fairly easy to take it out now. And we'll do that. That's it. And the bolt comes right off. Once you got that off, you can make this free. And then we'll just do the top side with this 3 nuts that we gotta take out. So at the top we have 3 nuts and bolts here. And these are actually easier to get out from the bottom. The actual nut here has something that makes it stay on or grip a little on the top, so you can loosen it up, and once you got it loose, you can just get it off by hand mostly. See, these nuts have this extra thing here that grips, so usually you don't even need a wrench on top to get it out. Now when doing these from the bottom, keep in mind that this moves, so you can get it out of the way and reach those back ones easier. Let me loosen that one too. Alright, so get those off by hand now. Once you get the last one off, it should just come right off. Alright, since I'm going to be putting on a spacer, let me show you how to do that. Here's the spacer. It's just a 2-inch block of aluminum. And you notice mine came with 3 bolts. These bolts are going to go on the coil bucket on top. So we're going to put the old, we're going to line these holes with these holes and put the old screws that we just took out in here. Now, you can put it either way. I like putting the nut inside of the block here, just because, like I said earlier, this little gripping surface will grip on aluminum, I think, better than on here. So I'm going to put that. It's a 14 millimeter socket that's going to go in there. I'll put the bolt on the back with the washer. I'm gonna put the other one, start the other ones too, so that everything's aligned. I'm gonna actually do it without just by hand, just get them started. And last one. Alright, so they're all getting started. Now you want to tighten these to 20 foot-pounds. So I'm going to use this torque wrench on this side. That's a little tricky because the whole thing moves, but there we go. And repeat that for the other 3 screws. Right, next thing we're going to do is we're going to install the Titan upper arms. I like to do this before taking out the bottom arms. That way we can hook this back up and it can hang off the top. We can get rid of the strap. Makes the rest a little bit easier. So these are the Titan upper arms. They're going to go right there. There's some spacers, and I'll show how to put those on in a second. And we're gonna hook this up here. They are the same for both sides. They're identical, so you don't matter which one goes on the driver or the passenger. That's with the PRG arms. I don't know on the stock arms, or if you're using another sort of arm, if that's the case. Just make sure it goes with this triangle pointing down like this, not up like that. So let's set it up so we can put it in. So the PRG arm should come with some hardware. First of all, it should come with a set of spacers. These spacers will go on each side of these ball joints here. Make sure they go in nice. And then it should come with this. It should already come like this, and this shows you the order it goes in. It's just like the one we took off. This nut's going to go on the bottom, and this is going to go in through here. So basically, this spacer here is going to go on through the top, and these are sort of a tight fit. So just be careful when you're putting them in that you don't bend anything. There we go. And then we're going to put this goes on the bottom. And PRG does recommend you fit them on to this first, not to the other side. One thing that I like to do before putting these on is, once you get those spacers on, is to put the bolt through here and kind of use it to kind of break that loose. So see how that moves? That will help you when putting it in to align it how it needs to be. It's a little tight when you first get it. There we go. That way that ball joint can move to the angle it needs to be when we're putting it up on the upper arm mount. Okay, so now we can put the arms back in, and sometimes it's going to be a little tough getting it to fit right in those slots. Make sure you keep pressing the spacers tend to want to fall out. There we go. And I'll already get that semi-aligned so we can get it on there. But first we're gonna put the bolts through the top and get that ready to go. All right, once you get these bolts back through, there we go. I'm just gonna put the nuts on by hand. I won't torque them down yet. We'll torque it down, everything down once we're finished. All right. So now what we're going to do is attach the spindle back up to the arm. So we're going to loosen the strap and be ready to get this nut under there to hold it. And so let's lift this up. That's going kind of tight. There you go. This moves too, so you can adjust the angle so you can get that in there. And what we'll do is we'll get the nut started. So we can at least hold it. And you gotta be careful that this goes into it. Make sure you don't bind it. I'm not going to torque it yet, I'm just going to tighten it till see this is still separated a little bit there, till that matches up, is in there. And we'll come back and tighten it. There we go. So now we can take the strap off. And this will now no longer need to hang in. We can take the lower arm out now. And this will hold everything in place. So let's do that now. All right. Now that we got everything, the spindle here secured to the upper arm, we can start removing the lower arm. And the lower arm is attached to the spindle thing here. And so we're going to take that one out. And that is a 21 millimeter on this side. And you can use a 17 millimeter wrench on the other side. And I don't know why I'm using that. 1 second. All right. And so then we just take this bolt out, and this is ready to come off. Now, the hub and the spindle actually go down. The arm, the lower arm, is going to come up. That's how it's going to come out. But before we finish taking everything out, I'm going to undo the bolts on the back, and let's do that. So there's two bolts that hold on the back, two nuts here, one here, one here. These are 21 millimeter as well on one side, but they're 22 millimeters for the wrench holding it in place on the other side. So let's go ahead and take these. That's one. That's the other one. And we're going to just hammer these out pretty soon. Loosen them up. And when you're going to hammer, always put the nut back in so you don't mess up the head of the take these out. Actually, before I take these out, I'm going to put the jack. Well, let's try taking it out, see what happens. So now we're going to try to do the lower arms completely unbolted, but we still got to separate it from this from the spindle down here. The way it is this arm has to come up in order to come out of here, and so we're going to put a jack right underneath the arm, not the spindle. It has to be under the arm. And actually, I'm going to touch the spindle there, so I got to move my jack. And we're going to lift up. And you see it's starting to separate here. We're going to see if we have luck. We might have to hammer it out if it doesn't come out. There we go. It's coming out. And actually, you can see here, this is stopping it from coming out all the way. So we're just going to... What we're going to do is we're going to take the nut off the axle holding the hub, and this has a cotter pin, so we got to take that out first. There we go. And then you want a 34mm socket there, and this is probably easier if you use an impact wrench, so that's what I'm going to do. You want to get it out there, and then you want to use a hammer to start pushing it out back. And as the axle starts going out, we want to try to separate the back of the arm, have it fall. So this sometimes is a little difficult, but this arm needs to come up off this, and sometimes it might be easier to use a jack to push it up. I'm going to try that. It looks like it's loosening up. See how they start separating here. Sometimes you might want to hit it. And keep pushing it from the front too. So what I'm doing is I keep pushing the axle out so this can come out more. And there, it's almost out. And there we go. That is the lower arm gone. So now what we want to do is finish removing this, the axle here. The half axle, I guess is what it's called. So we just keep hammering like I was showing earlier. And pulling on the hub. And this should come right out. And don't worry about the nut, because we're going to replace that nut anyway. We should never reuse those. There we go. and the axle is out of the hub. So now what we're going to do is get the axle out of the differential. Alright, so to take this off, there's nothing holding it in there, so you can just pry it off. And if you want to reuse it, try not to pry behind this flare here, because that will bend. If you don't care, you can just pry it anywhere. Also put a bucket down here, because there can be diff oil leaking out. You can help it by pulling out here. There we go. And we just pull it out. Let it drip a little bit into the bucket. Also, I'm not gonna be putting the new one in just yet. I gotta take out the differential. So for now, I'm just gonna stuff a paper towel in there to avoid any oil leaking out. Alright, so now that we got everything here disconnected, everything's free, no arm, this is a good time to take this guy out and add this extension so that we can reach the new extended hub. So what I like to do, put the nut back close to it so you know where it was, so you know how much to screw the old one back in. And we can just unscrew this. Should be really easy to unscrew. And what we're going to do is this screws into here. Actually, it's probably easier to screw it into here first. And just screw it back into where you had the nut. And then we screw this up in here. And we don't have to tighten it super tight because we're going to have to loosen it up and adjust it for doing the alignment later. So just get it on there snug and that's it. Alright, so the next thing is to get these arms back in place. These are the Titan arms. I think these are stock Titan lower arms. And these are directional. They're different from the driver's side and the passenger. There is a marking here that's, I don't know if you can see it on the video, but it says L for left, meaning driver's side. Basically, the difference is where the shock mount is. So if you look at where the shock will mount, it will always mount to the front of the vehicle. So make sure that this shock mount is on the front side of wherever you're going to install this. So this is the one that goes here, and it's just you're going to go exactly where the old one came out. So let's go ahead and put the bolts through the back first, and then we'll attach it to the hub. Right, so before we can put the arm back in, we want to lift this out of the way so we can fit the arm behind it. So a pretty easy way will be to just use the jack. Just pull it back, lift it out of the way. Also, it might be good to put this back in, at least loosely, so it just keeps the whole thing from going all over the place until we put the lower arm back in. So I can put that there. Get that supported. Now to get the arm back in, I'm going to try starting with the bottom first. So you see the arm has this little nub here. This is going to go through here. And so we're just going to put it in there. trying to get it as good as possible. Maybe support it on the back with something. Okay, so now we got to get this bottom bolt back in through here. The problem is, even though this looks like it's in all the way, it's not. And what's gonna happen if you look at the old arm, there's this ridge right here, and this bolt needs to fit right in through that. So if it doesn't go all the way down, this bolt's not gonna be able to fit. So you see right now, this bolt won't go in. So we gotta get this down lower, and the way to do that is I'm gonna support the hub with the jack again, and I'm gonna use a hammer. There's a stop right here that you can use to hit it with a hammer to get it down where it's supposed to be. And you'll know when the bolt actually goes through. There we go. And we just put the nut on the other side, and we're done with that. So let's get the lower arms in place. As you can see, what I've done is I got the hub and the spindle up on a jack to kind of lift it up. Already hooked up on the bottom here, and now I'm going to swing up the back. I found this to be the easiest way to do it. Once it's in there, might have to use a little hammer. Starting to get it in there. And then you have to push. Let me get one side in first. Get that in. Once you get it in, let's just get the nut and hand started. I'm going to leave torquing down everything to the very end. And this one, get that one in. Make sure you get the washers on both sides. And tighten this one too. Alright, before we finish, I want to go over this. This is the eccentric bolts on the lower arms. This is the front of the vehicle here. We want to set these so that we could get as close to the alignment as possible if we actually take it to the alignment shop. So what we want is this front side to be most in towards the middle of the vehicle, which means this fat part of the washer needs to be all the way out, pointing towards the wheel. You can see that as we move this, this moves in towards the vehicle. Basically, you want to watch it move in until may even go a little past it where it stops moving in and starts going back out. If it starts going back out, you've gone too far, so you kind of want to back off to right at the point where it stops, which is usually that fat part pointing towards the wheel. This will get you as close, especially I have 33-inch tires. This is the setting that will give you the most forward caster. And then you want the most negative camber you can get, and then I'll show the other side how you do that on the other side. Alright, same deal on this side, except it's backward. We want this as out as possible, and to do that we need to have this lip all the way towards the oil pan. Again, don't worry too much about where this is, you just watch this, see where it stops. So let's do that this side. Oh, before you actually do this, you want to get it snug enough so it's going to hold. If you don't tighten the bolt on the other side, then you'll have trouble. You'll just get it in the minute you let go, it'll just come back. So watch this, it's going out. Let's see, there's a point where it stops. See, it stopped here. And I just like going a little bit further just to make sure that it's coming back. And then you want to be in the middle of that. So there, it looks like that. You know, when you're in the middle, you notice that you wiggle it forward and you won't barely see this move. That means you're where you want to be. So it's usually pointing to the inside That will get you the best alignment, or the closest you can get for at least for 33-inch tires. Probably works good for even if you have stock 31-inch or 32-inch tires. It'll still work. It'll still get you close enough than just setting it randomly if you don't have alignment equipment and don't know what you're doing. So last thing we're going to do is put the coilover back in. We have these screws here that came with the spacer, and they screw right into the aluminum. There's no nut. You'll notice that when we put it back in, it'll be, whereas before it was this way, now the holes are backwards. So what I want to do is just get it started, find one of the holes and just get it started by hand, and just start getting all the 3 screws in there. You kind of just got to wiggle it around. And finally we just aligned it here. And get that bolt through there. Alright, so that's pretty much it for the Titan swap. Obviously we now have to go through and torque everything. In a minute I'll go through and say what each torque is. We gotta make sure we put this the steering assembly that we took out, put it back in, and that's pretty much it. Alright, so let's go over the torque ratings that you're gonna have to know. Starting from the top, the 2 bolts here that hold the upper control arms, those are around 130, 140 foot-pounds. The shock, the coilover top screws are about 30 foot-pounds. The bolt that holds the upper control arm to the spindle is around 100 foot-pounds. The bottom bolt here on the coilover is around 155 foot-pounds. The steering linkage is 37 foot-pounds. The bolt that goes attaches the spindle to the lower control arm, that is 94 foot-pounds, and then the bolts on the back that hold the upper control arms to the camber bolts are 100 foot-pounds. And then finally the steering linkage that we undid to loosen this here so we could work, that's 20 foot-pounds. And so that should be it. So we're pretty much done. I'm going to go ahead and stop now. What's missing is the axle that's going to go in here, but for that we have to switch out the differential. So I'll do that as a separate video and show how to put the axle back in. But in terms of the suspension setup, we are done.